A tiny 144Hz HDR monitor for just $130? Say it ain't so! Somebody pinch me because I'm dreaming, or maybe I'm just pinching one out, because yes, this is absolutely insane to be seeing these types of specs at such a low price. And that's right, today ARZOPA sent me over their 15.6-inch portable HDR 1080p 144Hz monitor. So let's go ahead and take a look at it and see whether or not it's worth purchasing. Now, right away, starting off with the specs, we're talking about a 1920 by 1080 resolution at 144Hz, which is actually pretty unusual, and why I decided to review this, as most of these things are only 60Hz. Now, in terms of the size, 15.6 inches, aspect ratio of 16:9. It's an IPS panel, has a PPI of 141, so similar to that of what you would see on a regular sized 4K monitor. A contrast ratio of 1000:1, viewing angles of 178 degrees, and then allegedly it has HDR support, but we'll see about that. Now, it does not have a very good stand, I'll be honest with you guys. In terms of the ports, what we're talking about here is a mini HDMI and 2 Type-C ports, and there is an adapter so that you can use this with a regular PC. But now let's go ahead and talk about the color. So in terms of the color accuracy, I was able to, with just a little bit of adjustment, get it to that roughly 6500K with a delta E of just 1, so it's not too bad there, although I couldn't get it necessarily perfect. Now, in terms of the gamut coverage, we're talking 99.3% sRGB, 74% Adobe RGB, and 78.6% DCI-P3. In terms of the volume, 111.3% sRGB, 76.7% Adobe RGB, and 78.8% DCI-P3. So fairly decent overall, although I would definitely use this for just sRGB. But what about the brightness? Well, here it comes in with a pretty reasonable 388 nits in terms of the 100% and 10% windows. So we're not going to look at games, because since this is a regular LCD panel, it's going to hit a max of 388 in all scenarios. Now, in terms of minimum brightness, I got 0.35 nits, and if you compare that to the maximum brightness in a checkerboard, that gives us a contrast ratio of around 1109:1, which does line up with what they're advertising. Now, in terms of HDR, is this thing actually capable of HDR? I would say no, not really. I mean, technically you can turn it on, but it has no local dimming zones, a maximum brightness of 388 nits, and I also couldn't get 10-bit support to work either. But can you overclock it? No. Now let's go ahead and talk about the latency. In terms of total system latency, I got 39.3 milliseconds, which for a portable monitor, guys, is actually pretty good. So yes, you could use this for gaming, although with the lower size and that slightly higher latency, I definitely wouldn't be using it for serious competitive gaming. Now, in terms of the power draw here, it was very, very good at just 9.7 watts. So that's actually very impressive and the best I've seen so far. But now let's go ahead and take a look at the UFO blurring test, as this is going to be the final decision as to whether or not I would actually use this for any light gaming. Now, taking a look at 144Hz through 100Hz here, you can see that they are all very similar. Sorry for it being a little bit overexposed, but if you do squint and take a look at it, you'll see that it's pretty good for a portable monitor, but it's nothing that's gonna blow you away. So I would consider this good enough to use for gaming at that 144Hz, but it's not gonna be, good enough, again, to be using for serious competitive gaming. Now, what about the finished viewing angles and uniformity? Well, the uniformity was decent, what you would expect out of an LCD. The viewing angles weren't very good, and the finish is, of course, using a disgusting matte finish, which makes me want to puke. But to be honest with you guys, this is a $130 monitor, it's 1080p. I honestly don't care at this price point what the finish is. I do start to care once we start talking about 1440p and up, or HDR, OLED, that sort of stuff. That's when I start to really care about the finish and where I think it makes a really big difference. Now, there is one other thing I want to mention. This does not have G-Sync or FreeSync support as far as I could tell. So let's talk about the conclusion. Should you be buying this thing? Honestly, I'm going to say at just $130 after a $20 discount on Amazon, I actually would buy this display. And the reason why is because although it isn't necessarily amazing in any singular aspect, it is very decent overall, and you're getting 144 Hz, and typically for $150 you're getting only a 60 Hz display. So if your main monitor is 144 Hz and you want a secondary monitor to line up with that, I think it's really nice to have them both at 144 Hz. And if you did want to do some gaming on the go with some sort of Switch-like device, it would also be acceptable for that as well. So there you have it. If you've been super excited to cram a new display up your ass, here's one that you can go ahead and do so. And if you want to do that, make sure to click my Amazon affiliate link in the description below. And also, if you want all the settings and ICC profiles that I use to calibrate this thing, I will have those linked in my Patreon in the description below, as always. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, RUPRO has you covered with their RUPRO 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable, available in sizes ranging from 3 to 165 feet, and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K at 60 FPS or 4K at 120 FPS HDR10 video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports eARC. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out RUPRO on Amazon today.